Hey everybody, I'm Gina B. Here with me is Salicrow. Unfortunately, no Mama D tonight. She is in Canada. She is in the storm region where she has had no power all day. So, you know, she wanted to be here. She really was excited to talk about cards because you know how much we love our Oracle decks and such. So, just kind of pray for her that she gets some power soon out there. And I'm very excited to get started tonight. And let me play our guest's bio video, if I can find it on here, and get her on here with us. She's really super amazing, does so much stuff. This is her whole life. So this is going to be a good show.
This week in the Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, we welcome Salicrow. She is a natural psychic medium who weaves the traditions of her Irish Traveler and Blackfoot heritage with modern magical techniques. For more than 30 years, she has worked as spirit channel, seer, and intuitive healer, offering readings and teaching workshops throughout the United States and internationally. The author of The Path of Elemental Witchcraft and Spirit Speaker, and now our featured book, Tarot as Storyteller, Psychic Development, Cartomancy, and Reading the Web of Fate. And in this guide to the art of cartomancy, psychic medium Salicrow shows beginner and seasoned practitioners alike how to read divination cards with greater accuracy and more profound insight. She shares practices to help you develop psychic ability, including empathic protection, body dowsing, utilizing sacred space and divine timing, and how to build one's personal symbolic language. She offers techniques for developing intuition and analytical questioning, encouraging the reader to take on the role of storyteller by looking deeply into the symbols and tales that each card holds. Expanding our concept of each card's symbolism, Salicrow explores the meanings of tarot and oracle cards through activated prayer, spell work, and guided journeys that introduce the major arcana as personal experiences. She also shows how to pick a deck, cleanse and bless the cards, and properly store them. She gives many spreads that look at relationships, career guidance, and healing. And through her insightful teachings, Salicrow demonstrates that card reading enhances the connection between intuition and imagination. With each reading, one's storytelling ability grows, providing clearer pictures of the players, situations, and details, and inner knowing or how to ask better questions. And we welcome you, Salicrow, and everyone to the Fox Den.
Hey, and welcome to the Fox Den. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you.
And I
Thank you
have
for having me.
I have to say, okay, everybody, this is the new Bible. All right. I had the PDF, and I was begging for the book to come out. I was like, I needed the book in hand because I need it right here for reference. Even though we do readings and such too. I do like oracle cards mostly. I mean, I started with tarot. Like you talk a lot about tarot, right? Mm-hmm. But not like I've ever heard anyone talk about tarot.
Yeah.
Which really, you've sparked my interest so much right now.
I just got done teaching a retreat in Massachusetts for tarot as a storyteller. And people walked away from it saying that same thing, that it had changed their view of divination, gave them more confidence, because the biggest thing I tell people is the books, even mine, are great to read, but not when you're doing a reading. Like right. You have to get away from memorization and what did they write in their book. That stuff is all super important, but it's important to do that when you are not sitting down to do the reading, to do it separately.
100%. Now that was this right here?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks pretty amazing. It looks really cool. And you had did you go in that teepee?
We used it. I rented the entire retreat center that had the teepee. It had the space where you see people near we didn't actually use the pizza thing because we were too busy, but I slept in a space. This is called the Salamander Hollow Healing Sanctuary, which is in Warwick, Massachusetts. And I really recommend it. It's on Hip Camp. And I slept in the bee house. So there was a house that literally I slept in a bed above bee boxes. So
Oh my God, you're brave. You are
the
brave.
bees weren't in there. The house was like, they were on one side and then the house was built around it. And the area where the bees were, they just told you, like, don't walk across that part of the yard and they won't bother you. And then nobody was bothered by a bee. We did have one bee in our house, but that was it.
Oh, wow. Well, that's lucky,
Yeah.
For me, I would be like, I'd have the room and there'd be a little escape hatch somewhere, and 500 would chase me right out the door. But so while we're doing the show, is if there are people that have questions or comments, because she knows everything about cards, okay, everything, how to cleanse them, how to pick them, how to store them, all of that. Hi, Jenny. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll put them up. All right. And it is going to change you, and you can get more, information about her. And your books are available here too, right? On your website?
I do not sell my books through my website, but there are links to buying them through my website. So I actually have 4 books. So the 3 that you know are through Inner Traditions. And then my first book was actually a memoir that was called Jump Girl, The Initiation and Art of a Spirit Speaker, which really is also a very instructional book, because people come to see me with like tags in it and underlining, and what they're doing is they're underlining their own experiences, because so many of us have psychic experiences.
Right. And even when people say they don't believe in it, and I say, I do paranormal stuff, and it's like, oh, I don't believe in ghosts, but this happened.
But I had this one time.
Yeah, right. There's always the story. And
yes.
I got like lots of marks and underlines and things
awesome.
already.
Awesome.
And I mean,
actually, that's my hope. When I wrote The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, when they asked me what my hopes was, I said I hoped that it would be dog-eared and coffee stained, and that somebody had used it so much that it was something that was, that looked like it had been used. Yeah, gone around.
Right. And that's exactly what this is going to help me. It's going to get me back into tarot. Like I have over here, like I made this little video, and for whatever reason it didn't upload, but I have, like, when I first started my very first oracle deck, and I always kept them wrapped up in my little, thing that I would put them on here, spread on it, all that kind of stuff, right? This was like, what, 30 years ago, for crying out loud,
Yeah.
And then I put them away, and still wrapped up in here. They're in their box, they're away. They're with rune cards and rune stones and, all that kind of.
I love the runes too. I've worked with the runes for like 25, 30 years almost now. So, yeah. I just love all metaphysical things and the psychic arts. That's really my passion.
Yeah. And then what I did do is I went and I got one of these decks. It's one of the teaching ones, right? So it has what it means forward, what it means, back and forth, like reversed and whatnot. Now that's a question, because people ask me all the time, when you turn a card over, say you're putting the card down, I put the card down like this. Do you flip it like this, or do you flip it like this? How do you flip your?
I don't think that there is a right way or a wrong way of doing it. I have a tendency, if I've got cards, I have a tendency to flip up, like from my deck, I flip up.
Right.
But I don't think that there's, the way that you flip your cards is going to be the right way for you. So a lot of what I talk about in tarot as a storyteller too is that your own personal approach is more important than anything you're going to read in this book, including mine. Like if you like to walk around in a circle 3 times before you turn your cards, that's your thing, then cool on you. Some people don't like to have all the cards facing up. They like to turn them only when they're doing the reading. And some of them have a desire to have all the cards up at once. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of what I figured. I figured it's like, if you do the same thing all the time, but then, when I'm doing readings too, and I don't usually use the tarot anymore, but now I'm gonna be. because
I use a combination of tarot and oracle cards. I have like probably 25 decks. I have two different offices, one at home, which is the one I'm at right now, and then I have an office in a bigger town. And I pick my deck often depending on who I'm working with and what they come in, like what are the kind of things that they're looking for. Because some of them, like the Rider Waite Smith Coleman deck, is which is what you were just showing, is very good for practical life readings because the pictures are simple. They're not super spiritual. They have more of a tendency to be, this, they're showing you everyday life stuff more than anything else. And then there's some decks that are super spiritual, and the oracle decks that are out there are amazing. So I do include spreads that are geared toward oracle decks in the book as well.
I printed out just a few, people, just a few. Okay? Right. So there are past lives ones, Wheel of the Year ones, past life relationship ones, relationships right now, reading, so many readings, so many spreads, so many different things, and the combination, and she also has it as the combination of tarot and oracle. So like when I have 34 or 5 decks of oracle cards, right? So when we do an oracle reading show, I will pull out, because I have all my cards actually right here in a little drawer that pulls out, and they're all sticked up in there. Kind of by what I'm using at the moment is more out front, because like those are what I feel connected to. But I will put out multiple decks. So if we're doing a show reading like this, and people are asking questions in the chat room, I'd like to have a multiple things. So I have like life cards, career, life, love cards, travel cards, my fairy deck. You know what I mean? Which is, I love this. I love that.
We all have our favorites.
Yeah. And of course, like, because I'm the fox, I have Foxfire cards.
Nice.
So I love those. But those are more heavy. You know what I mean? Those are more of a spiritual thing.
Right. So they're more inspirational and spiritual in nature.
Yeah. And then sometimes, and I read it in your book too, what you mentioned about like if someone even asks a simple question in the chat room, and I look and like we'll have like 2 or 3 of us doing, each pulling a card for the same situation. And I might pull a card and look at it and go, nope, I need more. And then I'll pull another card and I'll pull another card until I see it, until I know it.
Yeah. I encourage people to do that. Sometimes you're doing a reading, and if you don't know what something means, don't hesitate to draw more cards. And to be quite honest, at this point in my life, because I've been doing, readings for the public for, like 36 years. Okay. So it's a long time. I'm like, oh, wait a second. But at this point, sometimes I only draw 1 or 2 cards, and I can still give a full reading. I don't need all of the cards, because it's kind of like training wheels. In the beginning, you need a little bit more help. You might need a lot more cards. And then after you've been doing it longer and longer, you find that you can get triggers from just even 1 or 2 cards, just showing you a few things. But the wonderful thing about spreads, which is something I really focused on in the book too, is that spreads are the questions. And giving a good reading really depends on whether you ask good questions. So I talk about in the book that, we need to have a good intuition to be a good reader, but the best readers have a good intuition and a brain like a detective.
Yep.
Okay. Why did I see that? What does that mean? How many of them? Where was this talking about? What time period? It's like it's using all of the details and wanting more and more details.
Yeah. And do you find that because you do this all the time, that, it's just the information comes quicker, like more like second hand? Do you sometimes get it in advance, like before?
Yeah, I'm also a medium, so definitely with spirits. Spirits often are, especially if I've already communicated with a spirit for a family before, and like a different family member's coming back or they're coming for a reading. If I've already met the spirit, a lot of times they show up, and I know that they're. Yeah, I'm like, oh, this. Like, I'm not surprised when I see their family in my schedule because I'm like, oh, I recognize the spirit. With psychic readings, what I actually see is that there's a theme to the day. And I'm always joking, like the cosmic civil servant in the universe who is helping these people to schedule their similar problems on the same day is mind blowing to me because it happens so often that I'm like, you're the third person that I've read
Mhm.
for today who is doing this. Um,
We've had that happen here too.
yeah.
Like
So
what
there's some,
whole school will
you got,
be like,
somebody's got some killer organizational skills up there that's making all of this come
isn't it
together.
amazing? It does blow my mind at all times, because we've had because now I have you on the show, I might say, hey, can you come and do a reading show with us sometime? You know what I mean? But because I've had you now, it will be like I would pull a card, Mama D will pull a card, you'll pull a card. They will all be,
Have the same thing.
yeah,
It might
so
not show up as the same card too, because one of the things that I really point out in tarot as a storyteller is that we could all be looking at the same card, but I'm seeing the little rabbit in the bottom left-hand corner, and you're seeing the big coin in the middle of it, and somebody else is seeing, the birds that are flying overhead, and we're all going to come up with our information through how we are triggered.
Oh,
Just
100%.
like,
Oh, 100%. I get that. Not saying that we pull the same card. I'm saying that
right.
we have the similar, like the
Yes.
outcome
Yes.
is so
Yes.
similar. It's just beyond, and it does blow my
Yeah,
mind.
it is. It's really fun. It
Yeah,
is
it is.
like,
It is.
I also believe we're going through psychic evolution, which is something that I talk about in tarot, and probably in all of my books. I talk about that because that's one of my favorite subjects.
And speaking of, this is
And
one of the girls that comes on does a reading. Hi, Mary Jane. I'm surprised she's here. She's usually off with their daughter doing
cool.
diffuse
Well,
singing.
I find that like with the more and more people are becoming psychic, and I'm sure you've seen that too, the amount of people who are empathic, the amount of people having psychic experiences has been rapidly increasing over the years. And that is amazing, but it also is, you know, it is part of why things like divination become so much more important, because opening to your intuitive self, giving yourself some tools to get better information about that, instead of just getting the hit like, oh, I feel really anxious and I feel like something's going on with my mother. Well, you can also just pull out your cards and look.
Yeah, yeah, yep, yeah. I do that too. Like sometimes I will just have a day, and it's like, all right, is this day going to get better, or is this day going to stay like this?
Right.
You want to be prepared. This is my boyfriend right there. Hi, Bob.
Oh,
And so it's like I'll pull out a card, and then I'll get either hope or like just you're going to have to grin and bear it today.
right, right.
It's going to be
There's a
bad.
lot of people who they do start their day with one or two cards. One of the spreads that I put in there was called Head, Heart, and Hand spread, which actually I did not come up with. One of my friends who's a druid did. And I've used it and taught it ever since because it's so simple. It's a 3-card spread where the first card is looking at what do you need, what mind frame do you need to be at? How do you need to think about this? What does your mind need? The second card is what do you feel, or what does your heart need here? And then the third is what do you do with your hands? So what do we do about it? So what do I think? How do I emotionally handle this? And what do I do about it? And that's one of my favorites. And I think that if a person is doing like a daily reading, that's a great spread to do. How do I go about my day? Well, I have to think about it this way. This is the emotions that are influencing me, and this is how I handle it. And it really is helpful to just work with a simple spread like that regularly.
Definitely, definitely. It gets you more in tune with yourself too, on a daily, like, or why did I wake up like this? And you'll get to learn yourself better too. You know,
Absolutely.
it's good all the way around. Now, when you get a new deck, when you get a new deck, like Halloween deck, okay?
Yeah.
Because you have to have a Halloween deck. But what do you do to prepare your cards or to get in touch with your cards, put your energy into the card? What is your ritual that you do for your new cards?
For myself, well, I give a couple of examples and stuff in the book, but one of the things I really like to do is first thing is take it out and handle it a lot, shuffle it, really put your energy into it. If you're a Reiki practitioner, get your hands flowing with Reiki when you're doing, but also I really like to clean and clear it with a smoke. So something like a sage or Palo Santo or something like that, because it's come from a factory.
Right.
It's been handled in a very non-spiritual way, and you are putting your energy into it, as well as clearing away any debris that might be there, energetic debris that's from the handling that it's had in order to reach you. Okay. And if you receive and if you receive a deck from somebody else that, like, this was my deck and I didn't really use it, do you want it? If it's somebody who you really love their energy, you don't have to do much to it other than really start handling it a lot. But if it's something where you are unsure about who owned it last, same thing. Pull out some sage, pull out some Palo Santo, go through. You can lay all the cards out on the table if that's easier and go over it, but just take the time to energetically connect with it and to clean and clear away any potential negative energy.
I love that. I agree with that. But that is too for, like, even sometimes I'll just take the wand,
Yeah, that's another great way of doing it.
Go over it quick, if you just get that, or too much energy, too much the same energy, and you're just like, all right.
So I used to, because I've been doing this for a long time. So way before doing it by phone or doing it by internet or any of that. So I used to have people handle my cards all the time, and I would always shuffle them in between to kind of like break up the other person's energy. Okay. So that every time you're putting yourself back, your cards back to center with you, you're going, oh, back to this is mine. Now I don't even really have people touch my deck, because after the pandemic, I went primarily, well, during the pandemic, I was only online for a while. And then I did go back to seeing people in person, but I stopped having people touch my deck because it really didn't make a difference. I didn't need them to touch the cards for me to connect with their energy. But if you're starting out and you are new to it, I do recommend that. It's going to be helpful for you to hand the deck over to the person and let them think about it and put their energy into it.
And cut the cards, or
cut the cards, do their thing, so that they also feel like they're actively participating in their reading.
Right. It's like I don't do like one-on-one readings like that so much. A couple times here and there, I just don't have the time, nor I don't feel like I don't know. I'm very comfortable doing what we do here.
Yeah.
When I have multiple people asking questions, and I can pull out the cards and I can get those answers. Like I said, if I need 1, 2, or 3 from various decks, because I'll have all the decks out. And I know instinctively which one to pick a card from. Like, I know it. Okay.
Right.
But when I have someone in front of me, it's like, because I'm not, I've been doing stuff like this for years, but this is not my living. You know what I mean? I don't do this. Like, and I do this occasionally, but to have someone there, and it's like, I don't know if I would. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
it's not for everybody. I mean, psychics all enter into it differently. Like, I'm a medium and I will not do haunted houses because I consider myself above everything else to be a healer. So I'm not really the entertainment end of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to take people on a tour of a haunted house because my grandmother's who is a spirit's going to be wanting to kick my butt because why wasn't I helping those spirits instead of, making it entertainment? And that's not a criticism to people who do that. It's just saying, I don't do that.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Hey, you know what? We need all of this.
That's right. We need all of the different ways. I am a Reiki master in 6 schools of Reiki. I've been doing sound healing for 20 years, vocal toning. My regular week. So like being an author is really secondary for me. Like my real work, how I make my living is I've been a psychic for 30 years. And I've been on Gaia a couple times. And when that happened, I have clients in 32 countries now. So like I spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer one-on-one with people, whether it's tarot or spirit communication. So how you decide to work with it is really a personal choice. I like one-on-one the most because I go really deep with people. And, I have clients that I've been seeing the same people for 25 years. They show up every year at least for something. And sometimes I have people who I haven't seen in 10 years. And then when something happens in their life, I'm one of the first people that they come looking for. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of
wonderful
built relationships with my clients.
Yeah, that's great. That is awesome. See, I love doing this. I like bringing the variety because we do need all the different things.
We certainly do.
Yes, and every psychic is different, and every healer is different, and every paranormal investigator with some skills here and there, clear cognizant. You know what I mean? Like different things. I see spirits here and there, not all the time. I can't say I'm a psychic.
You have experiences.
Very many of them.
Yes.
many, because I've been doing that for 30 plus.
A long time, yes.
So yeah, and then again, the same thing, the more you do that, the more the spirit knows it, the more the spirit feels comfortable with you and wants to communicate with you. And like right now, my ears are ringing like crazy because they are like, I think it's because of you, in my house, because I have a bunch of them here, So it's like, I know when they're there, have the tone thing, the 3 different tones, the high, medium, and low tone. Right now, it's like I'm way up here. It's like a really high tone. It's almost really annoying right now, people. So it is, and it gets like that, but that is helpful to me when I take people into that haunted house, haunted asylum, or, things, because if I hear the low tone, I will take people away from that and don't go to that.
Right.
For their protection.
Yes, that's smart.
Yeah. I mean, we have to do what we do. That's what we do. It's like you want to help people. You don't want to hurt people. You don't want to hinder people. You know what I mean? You teach what you know, how you do it, but also, give over the information also as you're getting it correctly. You can't like sugarcoat things, like I know a lot of
I tell people that I am not chicken soup for the soul. I'm a poke in the third eye.
Right? Well, you got,
because the way that I look at it is, if somebody comes to me for a reading, they need information. They don't need me to hold their hand. I mean, I'm polite and I'm kind, and I present information in a way that helps people through things, but I'm not going to not tell them the hard things. Do you know what I mean? Like if I see that something hard is coming their way, they deserve to know that because they came to me asking me, so my approach has always been that I think that I'm personally am here to help other people who are opening up, which is why I love teaching and writing. And last year I started doing sacred travel. So last year I took, with my friend Anne-Marie Keppel, who's a death doula, I took 17 people to Ireland for Samhain last year. And then we just took people to Shasta, California. We're going back to Ireland this year. So, and all of my trips are very much based on teaching people and deep diving into whatever it is in the psychic field that they're wanting to learn. And that's some of my favorite work.
That's amazing. Oh my God. So now that's going back to your roots too, going to Ireland.
Yeah, I started, I mean, I had gone to Ireland multiple times on my own or with my family before that. And I have done a lot of spiritual work there, but this is different. This was taking it and actually bringing, which has been like a big goal for me in my life, because I love watching people open up and I love helping them see that this stuff is normal, that psychic stuff is normal, that people who are psychic are normal. We're everyday people. We're not, everybody has psychic ability. The amount, it's kind of like art, everybody can do art. Not everybody's going to be an artist, but everybody has the ability to at least pick up cards and start to get some information for themselves.
Yeah, because they're always on point.
Yes.
Whether it's something like, it doesn't even matter. Like a lot of times the cards aren't answering the question you asked. They're answering the question that you needed to hear. So, it goes along those routes too. And I'll say, this got to make sense to you. Right. I know you're asking about a career, but it's telling you about a love life. You know what I mean? Or it's
sometimes the things that come up are not, what they're asking about, but like you said, what they need to look at. And sometimes, like in Tarot Storyteller, I had what was called a long-term draw. And what that is that if you don't really, like, maybe you have something big that's you're needing to ask about yourself, something that is emotional or that you might be influencing by what you desire, so you're not getting a really clear answer, I recommend that you take that 1 to 3 card spread and you put it on your altar or someplace where you're going to see it. And I've had times where those cards have stayed on my altar for a month, where every day I'm looking at it and I'm getting a little more like, okay, I see this piece of it now, so that's really helpful for people who, especially when you're doing readings for yourself and the information that you're looking for is personal.
That's good advice, actually. Now, speaking of altars, a lot of people I know that do not have altars. I do not have an altar per se. I have my little setup here. Basically,
I would say that the whole display behind you is one big altar.
Right? Well, this is different. These are all my different various books for different situations. Art, because I'm an artist. Yep. My whole art situation over here. All spooky stories up here, and show books and things. Like I have over here is a lot of, because I was in construction my whole life, there's a lot of construction books and lighting books and things like that. Up there too is stuff, from design school. You know what I mean? So it's like various parts of my life. Like, yes, that's me.
Right.
And all the books I love. But my books over here, where this one is going to be, is my on-hand books. These are my books I'm going to be looking at and referring to on a daily.
Oh, well, that makes me very happy.
Yeah, this is a new Bible, people. Seriously, because it's for seasoned and people like me and seasoned like her. You know what I mean? Everything you need to know is in here. It really is, and it opens your eyes. Even if you're doing readings and you've been doing readings forever, right? You may want this just to open your eyes, because it did. It opened my eyes a lot, right? So it just like next week I want to do a reading show. Okay, I really do. So that's what I'm going to do. So next week, now you all know we're going to be doing a reading show next week. But it's just, it makes you think of things differently. I love the different spreads. And like I said, I printed these out before you
even got the physical book.
Nice. Got the physical book. But, it's like, I just love how many different types of spreads, and the spreads for the past lives and things in here too.
So I have used all of the spreads that are in the book too. So like the past life spread is a spread that I do regularly. And the White Raven reading that is in there was a spread that I designed that focuses on your gifts. And I designed that because in the beginning, in the pandemic, I was like, people can't handle seeing anything else dark right now. Let's focus on what gifts they have, what they're bringing to the table. So, like even the book Tarot as Storyteller, I did workshops on Tarot as Storyteller before I turned it into a book. Every single thing that is in any of my books has been tested with students in person and online. I teach a lot of online classes. So I want to do that because as a person who's been psychic my whole life, I don't want to take for granted that I can do something and then I'm trying to tell somebody they can do it and it's not approachable to them. So I run it through, classes. So I see like, yeah, this really works. This person can really do this.
Yeah. And you know what? You'll get that. You'll know it too. When you start reading this, that's exactly how this is written. It's like, I feel like I've known you already.
Yeah, that's something people say about all my books is that I write very personally and they all think that they know who I am, which is true because I'm the same person that you see in a video in person. When I did the Tarot as Storyteller retreat in Massachusetts last weekend, one of the women that came from Wisconsin, that's what she said. She'd had readings with me online. She goes, "You are exactly the same in person as you are." And I'm like, I don't have the energy to put into being somebody else.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Good.
This is me. This is good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you do what you do, I mean, yeah, I do know those people though.
Yes, I do too. But I can see that about you. You're the same person. I know that if you were walked away from the video camera and somebody ran into you in the grocery store, you would have the same personality.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have the bandwidth.
That's really cool. I'm like, wow, wait a second. People do that? I know they do, but I'm like, yeah, I don't have the bandwidth either.
I love it. I do love it. You know what else though? I want to say it before I forget. You also have in here like charms, like to do charms for the homes, like the blessings and things like that. And you actually used cards.
Yeah.
It's like you punch holes in cards and ribbons and put them together and all that. Yeah. So you got to go through a lot of decks of cards if you do that.
I certainly have, because the other thing is that we really, when you think about it, I mean, a deck of cards is sacred if you've used it. It has your energy on it. It can really, even with just a few cards, you can really pull something up. Now, you don't have to punch hole punches in it, but I have done that. And spread them out in a house blessing, or, I used to own a wellness center, which was a cafe and a store and it was huge. And I actually let it go when my career as an author started taking off too, because I couldn't do my services and run a wellness center and write books and take people on, it was kind of like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, but I used to have them strung up around my place of business too. Like people would do like prayer flags or something. And some of the spells, the thing I love too is like there's one in there that's a travel protection spell. And it tells you cards that you can put together in a spell form and how to perform that spell if you're traveling. So now you have this really compact travel altar, because your travel altar is just a couple of cards, right? So it doesn't take up much space at all. And that's one of my favorite things, is because it really is, it's like, it's handy, it's accessible, and it also helps us to build, when we start working with our cards in different ways, it helps us to build a relationship with what the meanings of the cards are more thoroughly. Because if I've used, the Queen of Pentacles in a card that was a blessing for, my garden, well, that card, there's a woman standing in this abundant garden in a lot of the decks. So it makes sense that I could use that as a representation of an abundant garden. Okay, so now incorporating that into my spell not only gives me, it gives me something to focus on that has an image. I can look at that and know, like, okay, I am focusing on this abundant garden, even though that's not the main meaning of the Queen of Pentacles, okay? But it still holds that energy inside of it.
Right. And then your intent too. So, your intention and your intent and all the things that go into it. Now, like what I really love is when you are looking at the decks, let's see, all right, I got Wheel of Fortune here. All right. And in your book, in the back, you go through descriptions of all the cards. Now I have plenty of books. I have read plenty of books. I have the books that comes with the decks, all that kind of stuff. What you said, and the thing that sticks out to me the most is you say, now what did you notice?
Yeah.
Notice this. All right. Like what, you point out every little drawing, every little guy in the corners, every little thing, that you might not have overlooked because people are looking at it. All right, well, it's the Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune means this, right? And then like on this deck, because this is a learning deck here that I got, right? And it's like upright, reverse, all the stuff, all the information's on the sides, on the bottom, what it means this way, what it means that way. So all the information's on there. So you don't have to go reading the book. It's all right here, just the learning. Right? Once you learn it, you know it. But you're so busy on the wording, you don't really take time to look at every aspect on that picture. Now I do that with oracle cards.
Yes.
Because I never read the books on an oracle card ever, So why?
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important because people can get really hung up on the meaning in the book when they're talking about the tarot, because that's how most books of the tarot have been written, is like the Ace of Wands means this. Okay. Right. Well, yeah. Sometimes
it means this.
Right. Sometimes I can pull a card and like, this is the Page of Pentacles. And the only thing, you can't really see this, but there's this guy and he's sitting there and he's reading a book and he's studying. So without even looking, like if I didn't look at the name on it, what I would see somebody who, there's stained glass, they're sitting and they're reading a book. This makes me feel like it's very scholarly. If this came up in somebody's reading, I'd probably be, my first thought would be like, it looks like you're going away for education or you're spending time on your education. You know what I mean? It's like, that's just the thought that came in that time. But the next time I might look at it and I might notice that on the bottom floor, there's one page that's illuminated. And then I would say, it seems like there's going to be a bit of information that comes your way that's going to illuminate what you've been looking for. Okay, so it's the same card.
Yeah, same card, different meanings for different people. And and it's like wherever this comes from is what you're looking at when you look at that card.
Yeah. So like when I just taught the retreat I did last weekend, the first assignment that they had, or the first thing that we did, was they picked a card, either that they chose it or they literally drew it from the deck, and then they had to tell a story about it, or tell a story using the card, not what the card meant, but they had to stand up and they had to tell a story either about themselves, somebody else, or something completely made up, and a fictional story that they could, based off of the image that they saw, and like this card here is the Six of Cups, very different deck. She's sitting in front of a mirror. So if I would have drawn that card, I would have, in my case, I probably would have told the story about how I communicated with my future self through mirrors when I was a child. They all told different stories, but that was such a huge icebreaker for the next day when we really dove into using that with the tarot intentionally, because they were already used to the idea of, well, what do I see in this card? Instead of, what does the book say about this card? What do I see when I look at this card?
Right. All these books that I have for all these decks, they're not even correct. You know what I mean? I don't open them. I just put my energy into them, and then I always like get in a new deck. I'll put my energy, and then I'll do a basic 3-card thing.
Yep.
But I just do past, present, future for myself.
Yep, that's because good too.
This is how I like, then I know I'm connecting with that deck. If it's not, then I put the deck away, and it's like, it's not time to use that deck here. Like I have a wonderful deck in here. It's a Celtic one, gods and goddesses and things, and and it's like it's amazing, and I can't connect with it. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, not yet. That's the thing. It's like I've had a few decks like that when I got it, I loved the artwork, but it just sat on my shelf until or maybe it's even the right situation. So I have the Starman deck, which was based on David Bowie, and it's very psychedelic, and it's super psychedelic. And I think that I've used it with clients only a handful of times. But today, somebody came in my office and I was like, oh, I want to use this deck. And I was like, I haven't used this deck in a long time, because it doesn't have traditional meanings. And that's something like, most books are based on the Rider-Waite Coleman deck. Okay. And they're going to have a lot of the same symbolism, because that deck was created by ceremonial magicians and was really laden with symbols that would trigger our subconscious mind. Okay. So symbols that are seen as magical. And so a lot of decks they might have different artwork, but they still use there's still the same symbols in that card as there was the Rider-Waite deck.
Like I have this steampunk one, and it's like, the 10 of Leviathans, all right? And 2 of Leviathans. It must be Leviathans.
Some decks too add extra. Some decks add different extra cards too. I have a deck that added castle cards. So to each suit, they don't just have king, queen, page, and knight. They also have castle cards. And while that's not traditional, I really like it, because when the castle card comes in, like if you got the castle of cups, it shows that you're building something. Do you know what I mean? The castle really stands for like, oh, you're building something here. You're creating something here. So I love that there's been so much expansion in oracle cards have really influenced tarot cards, because through oracle cards, people have gotten more creative with their interpretation, like your Leviathans of the traditional cards. They've stepped away from that. It is easier for a novice to learn on a deck that has been influenced by the Rider-Waite Coleman deck, because it does have all of that symbolic language woven into it.
Right.
And also any book that you pick up on the tarot, you're going to be able to find that the information is directed more at the type of card you're looking at.
And the same basic spreads all the time. Like that's why I love your spreads are so different. They're so unique and so different than I've worked with. You know what I mean? And I love it. I really do. I was just going to say something and it's gone.
I also cover working with playing cards. So
that's what it was. Yeah, because I have it on the bottom here.
You would think I was psychic. No.
Right? That was it. That was what
my grandmother used playing cards, because she was my great grandmother, so there wasn't tarot cards around. She used playing cards. The benefit of playing cards is they allow you to hide in plain sight. So if you're not living in an environment, a state, a family, or whatever, where you feel safe doing divination, but you still want to do it, you may want to think about 1, playing cards, and 2, learning numerology, because playing cards become much easier to do divination with if we understand numerology. I do cover numerology in Tarot as a Storyteller, because it is a huge contributor to your ability to read cards if you understand the numerological value behind the cards as well.
Right. It's like, it says, makes sense. It does. I mean, you got to use what you got to use. I mean, divination goes back to the beginning of time, for crying out loud. People were throwing, rocks
and stones.
Floating pieces of water and scrying in water and doing all these things.
There is so many. My book, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, I cover multiple forms of divination. So I covered forms of divination for each of the elements because there are so many.
Right, right.
And I've tried most of them.
Yeah, I used to do this class a long time ago. That's what we would do, like a weekly, something different.
Yeah, try something different. When I had my wellness center, I would do it sometimes just if we were having an event, I'd be like, okay, I'm doing tea leaf readings. Okay, I'm doing coffee readings. Okay, I'm going to do, rune readings, stick readings, whatever, just as kind of like a novelty thing sometimes, because if you learn how to do divination with one form or one tool, then other forms of divination become easier for you.
Right. That's why I have all these different things. And I even got like a palm reading information and, all this stuff, because it all fascinates me, and it's once you learn it, it's not like you're going to unlearn it. You learn it, you know it,
Right.
Right. Again, doesn't mean like I'm going to go become a palm reader. It's just that I want to know.
Yeah. Yep.
And people read lips, and people read, all different kinds of things. It's like crazy. People will read your eyes. Doctors can read your eyes. The circles around your eyes mean different things for your health. Like all the, there's so much in
there
this.
Is.
That's just, what do you want to focus on?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
focus on everything.
I love cards. Even when I was in high school, I didn't use tarot cards for the first time until I was 18. My husband, at the time, he was my boyfriend. He brought home the first deck I ever had. He brought it home to memorize it. And then it became mine immediately. But, when I was a teenager, I carried playing cards in my purse. And if I was at a party, I would just sit and shuffle cards. It was like the weirdest, like you could say, like premonition of my future that I didn't quite understand, because I wasn't playing poker. I wasn't playing cards with anybody. I was literally would just shuffle cards. I would sit there sometimes and just shuffle cards because I liked the feeling of it. Yeah. It's like the feeling of it was something that was so familiar to me. I think it also, like my grandmother was did card readings and stuff. So there was that piece of it. But I also think that, it's remembering the future. That's actually how I like to describe divination, is that we're remembering the future.
Right.
Because, if you look at something that's in the past, people will not all remember it exactly the same. It will be slightly different, and so the future has these slightly different potentials. And when you're doing a reading, you are looking at the path that the person is most likely to take. And that means that they can change the potential outcome, if they don't like the way something's going. And that's the whole reason for even having a reading, is to change what you can.
Yeah, they get the gloom and doom, like, oh no, they see a death card, I'm gonna die. It's like, no. It's the death of something. It's
right.
The of something. The end of your career, or your marriage, or your significant other, or a relationship that you've tried for forever and just it's not
or even
work.
Just a part of your own personality that maybe no longer serves you. That can show up that way too. So
exactly. It's
the
not
more
it's
my thing that I tell people is to take words like maybe, kind of, and think so out of your mind. Approach divination or communication with confidence. It's like, what did you see when you first looked at the card? And if you first looked at the card and your first thought was, I feel like there's an ending of a relationship here, then that's probably what you're looking at. It's like that first thought that comes to us that's our intuition. The part that's really tricky, and I do talk about that, there are things that are harder, like determining time. Determining time is one of the hardest things somebody can do in divination. Is like, I can tell you there's things in my life now that are so easy because I worked on them 10 years ago, because I knew that it was going to happen, but I didn't have my timeline right. I imagined that I had to have this done sooner than now. And over time, I've come up with ways to, get better viewing of of time. And I do talk about in the book, different ideas for people on how to get a clearer idea of what the timeline is that you're looking at.
Yep. You go over so much in this book. I got to get your other books. I do.
Yeah, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft is my most, it's been on the top 100 lists on Amazon for Gaia-based religions since it came out. And it's been out since 2022. So it is still a very good seller. Spirit Speaker, A Medium's Guide to Death and Dying was a book that I wrote for my clients because as a medium, I really am more of a healer. Sometimes other mediums send people to me because I work deeply with family. I'm very detail oriented and I work a lot, as that healer. But I wrote Spirit Speaker, like, based on all the questions that my clients regularly ask me. So that one's smaller, but The Path of Elemental Witchcraft is really that's the one I gotta get. That's the one. That's it's storytelling. I'm telling stories that are true, but there's literally instructions. If you're wanting to learn magic, if you start at the beginning of that book and you follow it all the way through, you will have an amazing amount of skill because I write it so that the skills stack on each other. So you learn this, and this makes it easier for you to learn this, and this makes it easier for you to learn this.
I got you how you wrote it just because of how you wrote this. So I would imagine.
I'm very, I was on a school board for 9 years. I know about education too. So.
Yeah. And the thing is you can't be too smart. You know what I mean? And it's smarter than the person that's trying to read it. You know what?
Yes.
You lose them.
Yes, that's actually one of my so I had a book contract before I'd ever written a book because I went in the back door. I read for somebody who was important in the metaphysical world, and then they introduced me to my publisher and I read for them. I did spirit communication for them, and then next thing I was getting a book. And one of the things is that I've always tried to write, like you said, not above people's head, because if I don't explain what I mean by words, then chances are you're not going to want to read it. Nobody likes to be talked down to. And that's one of the problems that sometimes people have is they can get it's not that they're even intending to be snobby, but they're using language that is not commonly used. So you have to explain that, like the word quarrant. Most people don't even know what that means. But if you read a book on tarot, it's constantly saying the quarrant, the quarrant, the quarrant, the quarrant. The quarrant is the person being read. So I will put in parentheses, quarrant, the person being read.
Yep. I know you explain everything. It's really nice. It's wonderful. It's like I said, it's the Bible. If you're starting, or if you're older, it's the things that you bypass. It's a refresher. You bypass, but there are so many new things and so much new. Oh my God! It sparks you. It gives you that love back. I really just want to do this again. More.
I just want to say, I really love the cover myself. I can say that because I didn't do the fucking cover. Oops, sorry. There we go. There's my F.
Yeah, that's it. You know what? I'm a masshole. I get it. And man, always getting at me. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, they did. They really, the publishing house did a really great job with it. It makes it fun. I'm like, I love the cover. I would walk into a store and want to pick that up just because of the cover, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever grabs you to get it, the thing is get it, because what's inside of it is the thing that you want.
Right.
And but just to look at, even though you explain on the back, right? Going into in depth of every single one of the cards. You have an in-depth thing and what to look at on the thing as a storyteller.
Journeys.
Journeys. And look at the pictures and stuff. But what it does is it also says, okay, well, that's for that. But now when I pick up this deck, or if I pick up this deck with all my little foxes and all the things, and there's so much to look at in these guys. You know what I mean? What are they doing now?
It teaches you how to look.
Yes. Not just, don't think it's just words. Don't think it's just, whatever the meaning is on the bottom. Yes. Look at the pictures, get your story, tell your truth, tell what you see. and ask the questions, right, of the
So
person.
the first tarot reading that I ever did, that was what happened to me. Like I had been very shortly after I got cards that my husband brought home. I played with them a few times myself. I was using the book just like everybody else. And my sister's friend asked me to do a reading for her. And I'm like, sure, I'll do a reading for you. And I went to pick up my little book and she goes, no, just tell me what you think. And I said, I can do that? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, that was it for me. I was like, as soon as somebody said to me, like, you can just tell me what you see, it was like a totally different way of being. And I still do encourage people, read the books, but don't read them when you're doing the reading. Read them when you're sitting around like you would any other book.
Right.
I have not created my own deck. So in answering Mary there.
No, but you say how to create a deck, your deck, your personal use deck, by putting different cards from various decks together. You can create a deck yourself that way. So that's a double meaning question right there.
Yeah. I also think that, like one of the things I talk about is that if you can read with any deck as soon as you learn how to be a storyteller when you're doing it, a psychic storyteller. You could even read from the stack of old birthday and Christmas cards that your grandma's got in the drawer in her bedroom, the things she's saved. If you didn't have cards, you could still use those in divination, because you're learning how to become a psychic storyteller. You're learning that these are just props that help you tell the story. And the real divination is coming from you. It's coming from your ability to tune in.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mama D and myself, we have been working on this for a long time. And we actually have 2 decks that we're creating. There's like going to be 50 cards in each deck because we have 50 things. Fox Wisdom and Butterfly Advice, combined. So, because we have 50 each, it's like, all right, well, I'll take the first 25 of mine and the first 25 of yours, and that'll be the first deck. And
there you go.
This way, and then it's going to be reversed on the second deck.
Oh, nice.
So we're working on that right now with actually your publisher here. So
awesome. Yeah. I love inner traditions. I started with North Atlantic Press and I moved to Inner Traditions, which is also really convenient because I just recorded the Path of Elemental Witchcraft. So Spirit Speaker is on audio, but it wasn't my voice. The Path of Elemental Witchcraft is going to be coming out on audio in my voice. And Tarot Storyteller, I think they're going to do an audio, but they're going to use a voice recorder again, mostly because here's some other exciting news. I just signed an addendum that Water Witch, so the Path of Elemental Witchcraft is actually broken into 4 books inside of that. There's Water Witch, Earth Witch, Air Witch, Fire Witch, and Water Witch is being turned into Spanish. So that's my big exciting news, is that their intention is to turn all of the 4 elements into it, but they're going to see how the Water Witch does first. And so lots of stuff are happening still. I have had multiple book things that I was juggling this last year between finishing Tarot as Storyteller, driving down to Southern Vermont multiple times to record, because the Path of Elemental Witchcraft is 570 pages. So it was a lot of reading.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's something. I'm so proud of you. I'm happy for you.
Proud of me too.
I really, this is wonderful. In your doing stuff like this is, when people are psychics and stuff, they get a bad rep sometimes. It's like, oh, you charge for readings and you do this and that. Well, yeah, it's your living. All right. But this is giving back. You know what I mean?
I'm a huge community builder. So I started my business. I mean, I live in a tiny town. I live in a town of 500 people. My office is in a town of maybe 7,000 people. You live in Southern Vermont. Hey, all right. I live up near St. Johnsbury. Actually, I live up near Lake Willoughby, but my office is in St. Johnsbury, Mary. But what I was going to say is that I was on a school board for years. I am a huge community builder. I have broken in my own life every stereotype about being a witch because I've been so involved. I was at a meeting a couple of years, so right before the St. Johnsbury was one of the key places to go for the eclipse last year. And I remember that I was in this town meeting on Zoom, and it was, I think, the vice president of the private school, which is this prestigious private school, a bank president, and two other, like business people, and me. And as we're going through and we're introducing ourselves because we're all involved in, helping something happen for this event. One of them was from the museum, all this. And then it came to me and I'm like, I'm Salicrow and I'm the town psychic.
Right.
So I just think that, being real, like real people do love these things. My clients are of every, I have clients that are billionaires. I have clients that are, had to save up for months to come to see me. And I treat them all the same. And I really believe that, like if we want to change what people think about witchcraft and what people think about psychics, we have to be involved in our communities and we have to be out there taking care of people and doing the right thing, because that's how you do change that. You show them that, I still care about my neighbors. I still care about my community. I care about the kids. I care about, that's really, I think, what you do if you want to change how people feel about people like us, right? We're normal people who like to do weird shit.
Viva la difference, baby. But it is true. It's like the same thing in the paranormal community. It is, oh, it's crazy. The drama is insane, and it's like, it's side picking and it's this and it's that, people lose the whole reason why we do it. We do this to help people, help locations, help whatever, what I mean? We do this to help.
And we really have to keep the competition out of it. And I'm not saying that competition is unhealthy.
No competition, but there isn't.
Right, I mean? Exactly. It's like, I'm not the right person for everybody. You're not the right person for everybody.
Right.
And when we can get away from that, we don't need that in our communities where we're trying to bring change about in consciousness. We have to be representatives of that. We can't, like, I personally hate, I'm like, drama's for the stage, okay?
Right. It's a detriment to everyone. It is. And it's just, and again, I don't have the bandwidth. I really don't.
No, me either.
And it's like, I just want to do what I do. I want to do the things that I do to help people, to help the community. Like, we have a huge Paracon. We had 9,000 people come to it, and that's because we had Josh Gates. I think.
Nice.
I mean, a lot of people, but I mean, we had, Josh we went from 7,000 to 9,000 people coming. So big jump. But we do that to benefit Penhurst, to benefit the grounds, the upkeep of the grounds, the things that they're doing there. So we try to give back all the time. Like you give, giving back. Giving back is your wisdom in here. And I'm guaranteed I'm getting that book tomorrow. This is how you pass it on. This is how everything lives and survives and continues, because it needs to. There's a need. There's a need for what I do. There's a need for what you do. There's a need for everybody in these different realms, in whatever realm that you're in.
Particularly because we are going through a psychic evolution. So, people are becoming more empathic and having these experiences, and they don't even know what's happening to them. So
who are they going to learn it from?
Right, exactly. And, I want to just say, like, the more that we make ourselves available and normal and remove some of that fear that comes from the occult. Okay, the word occult simply means hidden. It's hidden knowledge. It's stuff that not everybody knows about. And the word magic is simply science that hasn't yet been explained. quantum physics is coming pretty damn close. They are really giving us definitions for things and explaining things that, are making it so, like, I tell people, like, what I do for a living is literally magic. Okay. I look into people's futures and their lives, and I talk to their dead people, and I do energetic healing. That's my 9 to 5 kind of thing. And I used to think, yeah, okay, that's like, if you look it up, it's technically magic, but it's really hard to tell people that my job is magic because there's so much proof. Okay. You can buy, so Mary's question, where to buy my book so it can benefit me the most. It doesn't matter where you buy it, but if you really want to benefit me, you can leave a review on Amazon, even if you didn't buy your book on Amazon. And reviews really help the
All authors.
author. Okay. So if you want to really help me out, you don't have to buy it on Amazon. You can buy it at any major bookseller. But go and leave a review on Amazon. That is one of the best things you can do for any author.
Yeah. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do one for all your books that are on there. But because you are, you're amazing. You're a kind, wonderful, beautiful soul. You can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it. It's palpable. It really is, and it shows. It shows through the reading. Got it? You got it already, good girl.
Woo woo.
And David, the upkeep of my playing fields. Does that mean that I may be an earth witch? I've been working with turf for almost half of my life. Now,
you definitely can. David, your question is, like the upkeep of your playing fields. Does that mean I may be an earth witch? I've been working with the turf for almost half my life. I would tell you that yes, but you might want to read that book and then actually look at things that you can do that might amplify your turf. Okay. So a lot of, in the Earth Witch section, there's a whole section on geomancy. And geomancy is like dowsing and using the Earth's energy lines to amplify spaces. So during the pandemic, I built a ridiculous amount of temples on my own property. And I teach people how to do that in that book. So, and those temples can be really small. They can be really small activation places that aren't really noticeable. So if you're trying to keep it under wraps and not share it with the whole world that you're doing the magic, you can do it in a more, quiet way. But most of the time, it just looks like beautiful stonework when you do it. Like when people come to my place, what they see is like, I've got a spiral in my yard. I have a beautiful stone altar. You go up in the woods, you can see that there are things that have been done with I have a lot of white quartz on my property. But yeah, if you're really drawn to taking care of the earth, what will probably happen to you, though, is that you'll become a little bit more conscious of the ways to do that in a healthier way. And thank you, Mary, for buying my book. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to help you a lot, Mary Jane, a lot. You want to do a reading show next week? Or are they still going to be on vacation? Mary Jane? But it's just, it's beyond, it's beyond comprehension of the knowledge that you have. That, how did you learn all of this yourself? Like, I know you said you've been doing it for 30 plus years.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah, I get obsessed too. I'm a little obsessed.
I call what I do my life path, mostly because my husband many years ago told me that if I didn't change what I called my work, that I would be a workaholic. Because you can get my book in Australia. I actually have a lot of Australian clients, David. And I'm going on the 14th, I fly out to Boulder to record my 3rd episode on Open Minds with Regina Meredith on Gaia. So I've done one for Elemental Witchcraft, one for Tarot as a Storyteller, and one for Elemental Witchcraft, one of Spirit Speaker, and then I'll be doing one for Tarot as a Storyteller. So, but you can, Australia is one of the places that's easy to get my books, and all through like the UK and stuff like that. And like I said, the publication that I work with is starting to do Spanish. So my books I think that their plan is to move all of them into Spanish, but we're starting with Water Witch from the Path of Elemental Witchcraft.
Perfect. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And it really is funny when you think, like, so years ago, my first book, which is Jump Girl: An Initiation in Art of the Spirit Speaker, which is with North Atlantic Press. You can still get it on like Amazon. It's distributed through Random House. That book, when I wrote it, you know, a lot of it was sharing how I learned the things that I did and how I grew up having these psychic experiences from the time I was very little. Like my sister and I were communicating with our older selves and through other spirits through mirrors when we were like 3 and 4 years old. So this is like every part of my life has been this. And so when you ask me, how do I learn this? I love this. I love every part about it. And I'm an obsessive learner. Like I first studied the tarot for years in every way that I could. And then I became a Reiki master and I ended up getting my master's in 6 schools of Reiki. And then I started doing sound healing and I had spirit communication. Now in Jump Girl, I had a major opening when I was 30 years old that I thought I was going crazy because it was so intense. It's like half of that book. But in it, my spirits were talking to me. And like, I live in this town of 500 people. At the time I had dial-up internet and my spirits are like, you're going to be on TV. You're going to write books. And I'm like,
What?
I live in Vermont. Like, I live in the middle of nowhere.
Some apple pie and some cheese.
And, you know, this is the crazy part. They told me that everything would have a Vermont connection. So I got my start because of Robert Simmons, who wrote the Book of Stones. Okay. He literally came to my house for a reading because I had been doing spirit communication for a friend of theirs. And him and his wife came to my house. And when he walked in, I was like, hey, I got your book. But I impressed him so much that he kept coming back to see me. And he lives in New Zealand, but he had a event in Burlington for like 300 people. And I did spirit communication there. He asked me to come and do a gallery. And then he introduced me to my publisher. So the first door was opened by somebody coming into my house in Vermont. My first publishing house, I met with the owner of the company while he was visiting Vermont. He had started his company when he worked at Goddard College in Vermont. Even though it was a California company, it still had a Vermont root. And then I ended up moving to North Atlantic Press, which is a Vermont-based.
Well, talk about synchronicity.
I know. I was like, wow, okay. So
this is meant to be.
Yes, this is meant to be. And it can happen. I think the fun part is that I love mirrors, Mary Jane. Sorry. Like they are really fabulous. And I can understand it.
I love mirrors too.
Like I have mirrors everywhere in my house because
I use mirrors in paranormal too, because like, you know, sometimes in cleansings, you can trap a spirit between the two of them to help you remove a spirit.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
That was something I didn't know.
Yeah. You trick them. Like when you can move them through the house, you know, like I move them, I go from the top to the bottom and I get them, and then they don't want to go out the door. However, I can get close enough to the door. But if I have a mirror up above and a mirror up above and they get in that space, then they're like trapped there. You know?
Yeah.
And then you can focus that.
I have a bunch of mirror magic in the Path of Elemental Witchcraft.
Oh, do you? Oh my God, do I have to get this book?
I know, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
You're going to love it. And I am a good storyteller. So the way that book is written is I tell a story that's true. It either happened to me or one of my clients. And then I teach a technique. So it's broken down really easy that you can learn things through first having that example of, this is an example of how this really happened. And here's some literally I go step 1, step 2, step 3.
For people like me, yes, 1 foot in front of you, please. You know, but that's awesome. I appreciate that. I do. You know what I mean? Because that to me, you know, I'm not saying I'm stupid. I'm just saying that I think I feel for everybody. When I read a book, I feel like if everybody is reading this, are they going to understand it? I mean, and I think I'm a little intelligent, right? But when I have to get one of these books for one of my shows and I have to look up every other word myself,
yeah,
I'm not going to recommend this book for everybody to read.
right.
This I'm recommending for everyone to read. I
Oh,
can't
thank you
wait
so
to
much,
get
Gina.
the
I
next,
appreciate it.
and I really can't. But I mean, but mirrors go like again so far back in time in scrying and everything. And then there's black mirrors. People using the black mirrors for things, you know.
Yeah.
But I did
Well,
one.
black mirrors are really good because you don't see your own reflection in them as much. So that they can help you to be, to open your own, like, because you're really working with your third eye a lot. And it's really, black mirrors are more about, like, they allow you kind of like a crystal ball to get a reflection that doesn't really quite show you the image as perfectly as it should. And that gives your mind something to play with and then the real work is happening in here, right? Okay. Just like when we're reading cards, the real work is happening inside of our mind. It's in our third eye. That we're really doing most of the visualizing.
Yeah.
I was really confused by that about crystal balls when I was a kid because, in Scooby-Doo, they show clear pictures in the crystal ball. And I'm like, I have never had that happen to me.
Right. I know. And then the things are upside down. So wait a minute, what's going on here?
Right.
But I have crystal balls. I have one.
I do too.
There's a little one right there.
Yep.
It's fun. It's fun. But the mirrors again, like I had looked in one the first time that I had scribed, and we had a candle, and you just stare into the mirror and stare and stare and stare and try not to blink. Right. All of a sudden, I like changed. My hair was longer, but I had a slash across my face, and it was like this was darker than this. Right? It all made. I remember it, and I can still see it in my mind's eye so perfectly. But 20 plus years later, I did a aura regression thing, and like I've always had this fear of marriage, right? Like this. Not that I'm opposed to it, as I'm not, but I have an initial fear, right?
Yep.
Because in one of my past lives, I had to be wed for money that I did not want to get wed. You know what I mean? And I was axed in the face right after the wedding, thrown off a cliff. And it's like, and I saw the whole thing, but that was that mark.
Thing that you saw mirror first. I've done that same kind of work with mirrors before.
Yep.
It can be really powerful. I just realized I wanted to let you know that this is the cup I'm using tonight.
Oh, I love that. Oh
my husband loves foxes, so I have a lot of fox stuff too. There you go.
50 million of fox things everywhere. I could call the Guinness Book of World Records. There's no doubt. I could call it world records for how many foxes I have in this house, inside and outside.
Nice.
And you talk about Book of Shadows, my book that I write things in. That fox on it,
Oh, nice. Yeah. So the Book of Shadows is something I talk about in pretty much all of my books. And that a Book of Shadows is really your magical journal. And, the difference between that in your regular journal or diary is that you're not going to write, my husband pissed me off today because he didn't put his whatever laundry away or something, or I have this emotional thing going on with my mother, and you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to put that stuff in your Book of Shadows. Your Book of Shadows is more like a college notebook that you are writing down things that are study. And, I don't always use the same book. I am ADHD and a Gemini. So, like, I just told my daughter this year, I was like, look, I got a steamer trunk of journals. If I die, there's at least another book in there. And I was like, but you should know that it's not chronological. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you might open the book and it might say 12/22, 2023. And the next entry might be 6/20/23. 2025, because I just picked up whatever book that I wanted to work with because I liked that cover at the moment, or I liked the texture of the paper, but it's all in there. And, Books of Shadows should be recording your magical experiences. If you've using it for a reading, you write your reading down in it. And this is actually my real key for doing personal readings. Write it all down and do it in the third person. So when I do a reading for myself, I'm actually doing a reading for Sally. I'm not doing a reading for myself. I'm doing a reading for Sally. I see myself as a separate person, and I use my Book of Shadows. I write down my question, then I write the card that I drew, and then I write exactly what I think it means at that moment. And I go on to the next one, the next card. When we do that, we're going to keep ourselves more honest because we're writing it down and we're approaching it in the third person. So Gina, you're not doing a reading for yourself. You're doing a reading for Gina. And that makes it so that we get to just step back just a little bit, because our emotions are going to affect readings we do for ourselves. I once believed that my husband was dead on the side of the road, and it was because he was supposed to meet me somewhere. He didn't. And he's not that kind of person that he wouldn't call. Supposed to be in another place, he wasn't. So by the time we got to that, I'm nervous. Something's wrong. Where is he? And so I pull out my cards and I'm shuffling my cards and I'm like, oh my God, he's, something bad has happened. I know it. And he pulled up the driveway. And really what had happened is he was with no cell service. This was years ago. He had no cell service. He had finished up a job and he had a drink with the owners of the house because he used to be a heating contractor. He had a drink on their porch. But I'm like running across my driveway crying. I'm like, oh my God, you're not dead. And, that was very, our kids were still really little. It was many, many years ago, but it was like that big awareness for me that I needed to center my emotions before I did a reading. We all have to do that. So if you're really emotional about something, do some meditation, do some breathing, write down your questions, write down your answers, put yourself in a calm space before you do the reading, because otherwise you are going to influence what you think the answers are. You can interpret that as, that the sky is falling.
Yep. And grounding and shielding and
all of that.
Prepping your altar and then lighting your white candles.
Yep.
I always emphasize the thing about white candles. I had to do a house cleansing because the little boy was getting attacked in the house. So I had to, seal him, protect him, get him to understand, why he was being attacked, is because his third eye was wide open. He didn't understand what was going on and all this, a lot of stuff, right? So it's like counseling for the mom, counseling for the kid, counseling for the spirit in the house. And then I had to get rid of the spirit in the house. And I had to close the house. And I had to close the property. And I had to seal the whole grounds, because he was still getting attacked. It's like, oh my God, craziness. But it's like you have to take it in account, this isn't me doing this. This is coming from something else. And I put so much energy into that. And that was a learned thing that I had to learn, because I do prana healing. And instead of drawing it out and pulling it into me like a ailment on a body, I have to draw it out and throw it away, and not coming to me because, you learn from experience.
Yes.
With the house cleansing and the same thing with the thing. It's like, it's not me doing it. It's someone else doing it. And I'm just there, Now
that's an interesting part because I do not work that way. It is me. So, but my sister, there's two types of ways that people do readings, whether they're receiving messages from spirits or they're receiving information when they're doing a card reading. And one is often referred to as the hollow bone, which sounds like what you do. Okay. So that's very shamanic. The hollow bone is that you allow spirit or a particular spirit to work through you. And that when you're doing even a reading, sometimes you might interpret that you're getting the information from a spirit or from something outside of yourself. The that's kind of like the difference between shamans and mediums too. Is a medium.
I do more of a shamanistic ritual too when I do cleanse. So I don't know if that's what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just the way that you're
that.
describing that. That's what that is. When you say, I feel like I am channeling something through me and I am doing it, that is more of that hollow bone kind of thing. I very much am a kind of a control freak, you know, so I like to be in charge. And like divination for me, it's me who's looking. I'm not talking to a spirit who's telling me an answer. It's me. I'm looking for that answer. So that's, some people do it the way that I do, which it's like I myself am searching for the answer. My spirit communication and my psychic ability are two different things for me. So like when I'm talking to dead people and when I'm looking, I have spirits that I work with. One of my spirits is psychic as well. So he may tell me things that I don't quite see. Like if I'm confused by something, he may be like, oh, you should look at it this way, or I'm seeing this. But for me, when it comes to divination and psychic things, it's me. I'm looking. I'm the one who is searching for that. It's not me receiving an answer from something else. Spirit communication for me is different than that.
All right. Now this is where it's weird, right? Because when I do paranormal investigating, this is all me. I am getting information. I am getting all the stuff. I am, I'm going and I'm talking to the people. I'm talking to the spirit. I'm that counselor. You know what I mean? So you got to counsel the spirit, you got to counsel the people, and you got to see if they can work together. And if not, one or the other has to go. But when it's time for spirit to go, it's different.
Well, that's it. So my sister, again, she's more, her abilities more lean into what is considered shamanism and how she approaches things. She's very talented psychic on her own. Just we have a little different flavor. And she, like you, she's super fucking smart. She knows her stuff. And most of the time it's her. But when she's doing energy work, she always describes it as something working through her. Okay. So like what you
feel different. You just feel different, and you're trying to get the people to trust you that you know exactly what you're doing. And I know for a fact, me personally, I know that this is going to work. That spirit is gone. All right.
You don't really know what you're doing or what's, my sister will say she doesn't know how it's going to play out. Like she doesn't know what, she's not like you. She knows it's going to work. She knows her stuff, but she's often opening herself up. So in shamanism, that is called the hollow bone. And that means that in many ways, when you're doing energetic work, you step out, you step to the side, you're in the passenger seat of the car. Something else is directing how you are doing this. Like I didn't know that I needed to do this particular move, but I know how to do that particular move because something else is telling me do this.
It's like that claircognizance type thing. I've been in construction my whole life. That was my business, and even if I didn't know how to do something, I would take the job because I know it is going to be downloaded into my mind exactly how to do that job. And it does. And it just comes and I know exactly step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, how to do it. And I was the boss. And then of course you have the men that say, well, I'm going to do this. And it's like, no, you're not.
You are the second very psychic. I have a mentorship program that, where I work one-on-one with people. And I was mentoring a woman in Ireland who she was ran a construction crew. She was significantly big in it. And she was also very psychic. And so, she also knew a lot of things that she shouldn't know. And it was hard sometimes for the men she worked with because it's like, what?
Very. And then, of course, and when you're doing construction too, when you have all these things and, with the spirits there and they're coming up to you and it's like, not now, I'm trying to talk to the people. I'm trying to sell a job here. I'm like, I'm going to create such a beautiful space for you. And there's something like, and it's like, all right, not now,
Right.
It gets like, oh boy, you
got to get better at just hiding that you're having the conversation, because I'm often accompanied by lots of spirits that are talking to me. And when I had my November incident that I wrote about in my first book, Jump Girl, I was literally being trained by 5 spirits. And one of the things that they were training me on, and a lot of it was about spirit communication and healing and different aspects of that. But one of the things they were training me was how to be normal while this was happening. And I remember that I had gone to, so Chudder's in Littleton, New Hampshire is Guinness Book of World Records longest candy counter.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. But it's near Christmas time. My kids were still little. I was over buying specialty candy, and I am like just barely holding my fucking shit together at this point because I'm having this major opening. My husband's there with me. And the spirit that I had, I worked with him for 20 years as my doorman, which meant he watched the other side for me when I was doing spirit communication. His name is Adam, and he was somebody that was my younger sister's best friend in life. And when he died, and it was all meant to be, we knew each other from other lives. He was a big part of my opening because I knew him enough, but not enough to know all his stuff. So it gave me this ability to get confirmation. But he played this game with me. I remember being at the candy counter and I'm trying to buy, candy. And he's like goofing around and hiding. And then he's saying things like, nobody can see me but you, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm standing at this candy counter and I'm laughing. Okay. And I'm like, oh my God, I look like the crazy person. There's nobody around me. And I'm just laughing here, picking up my candy. And that was like, okay, Sally, you have to learn how to, here's your poker face, like, you don't have to let the world know that you're having this moment.
In my mind, not now. You know what I mean? Like, just stop, because I know you're there. I no matter how much you're doing this, I know you're there, but I'm having a conversation right now.
Right. Wait your turn.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah, exactly. If I get this job and I come back and I'm ripping apart this room and you don't like me taking that wallpaper down, you can tell me then.
Right.
But, not now. It's not your time. It's not your place. It's not your house. You know what I mean? So it's always those things. And then that strong will, like, I know you have that strong will, that strong personality. That's me. When I go and I own the place, that's why I know what I'm doing there will work.
Yep.
Because I own it, I'm that confident, I do have the knowledge. I do have the skills. I do know what I'm doing. No matter how it comes, because it's going to come one way or another, but that job will get done, spirit and actual work.
Right, exactly.
Right. So it's both. And it's fun. And what do we have for time? Okay. Do you really, we've already yapped for an hour and a half and it feels like we've only just started, because we really have. I feel like I've known you forever. I really do.
That's one thing that people say about me a lot, is that because I am just really straightforward about who I am. And if you've read my books, there's not much I hide about who I am, because I really feel like part of what my whole purpose in life is to normalize these experiences for people and to explain it in a way that they can make sense of their own life. So, because, that was the big eye opener when I wrote my first book, when people started showing up with things underlined and pieces of paper stuck in the book. And it was because these were experiences that happened to them as well. And they didn't know what to call it. They didn't even know if it was real. Yeah, I see you got some of that going on too.
Yep. And I just got it, so I give it time.
Well, I love that because the reality of it is that most of us are having experiences, and more people are having experiences as we move into psychic evolution, as we move into this, where our consciousness is opening. And I have my own theories on it. I actually believe that the internet is partially responsible for that, because it takes away, like, it gives us this understanding that, like, we can get information like that. Okay. And we can connect to people across the world like that because of the internet. And we don't really know how it works. I don't know how it works.
I would not have met you if I did not have this show.
Right. Exactly.
Hundreds of people will have met you because of this show and all the other things that you do. You know what I mean? So it's like, And that's what happened. Then one person will say, hey, I just saw this really cool lady on the show, and you really watch this one, you know what I mean?
And then it
up.
moves out from that. But that also helps us to understand that if I can receive information at the click of my fingers from this machine in this
everybody else does too.
whatever the fuck it is,
Yep.
then I can also receive information from the world around me that way, you know, and that the world is constantly speaking. So I am a huge, like, I work with Norse magic, I work with Odin and Freya and runes regularly in my own life as well. And I love runes because you can walk out your door and have the universe communicating with you, because the runes are being formed in trees and in street signs and everywhere you go. And after a while, you realize that, you know, whether you call it God, goddess, universe, there is a communication that is going on for us all the time. And a lot of times it's just taking the doubt words out, maybe, kind of, and think so. It might mean this. Well, what if you just said it means this and you see how it feels to you, you know, instead of first coming at it with doubt.
Practice makes perfect. You know what I mean? Like, if I did this all the time, I would have more confidence in doing this and more confidence in doing that one by one, you know, one-on-one. But I do too many things, you know, so I can't focus on that. I'm focusing on you right now. I'm focusing on next week. We're going to do a reading show because you sparked me, right? So we're going to do a reading show next week. And the week after that was, you know, it's going to be something else, and I'm going to be focused on that. You know,
we don't all have the same job to play.
This is always with me, though. You know what I mean? My cards are always right here. I refer to them, you know, when I need to, not daily, but almost. You know, and especially if I have a question about something that I'm doing or something, all of a sudden I'm getting something, you know, and it's like, well, is this for me? Is this for someone else? Is this for whatever? You know what I mean? And the cards will tell you. They will tell you.
That's something that the book really has too, is it has like, I have a couple of different techniques for determining whether what you're feeling is happening to you or to somebody else. You know, those are really helpful, because as a person who does get psychic hits, sometimes we just have this feeling, and it might be a feeling of dread, and then we get stuck and we're like, well, I don't even know if this feeling of dread, is this my dread? Is this going to happen to me directly? Is this going to happen to somebody I love? Is this going to happen globally? Is this going to happen? Because I've had moments where I literally have had a huge download, an emotional response that something terrible was going to happen. And it was a global event. It wasn't something that was affecting me on a personal level, but I still had this reasonable, suddenly overcome with bawling and crying and just knowing. And I got up finally and was like, I went and Googled, and I was like, oh my God, you know, at the time, a mosque had been blown up, and it was the beginning of the Iraq war, the last one that we had. So it was a substantial event, and I felt it. But if
my sister-in-law does that too, for big catastrophes and plane crashes and things like that. She doesn't see anything else, just things like that.
Right. It's not
her birthday is 9/11. That's her birthday.
Geez,
for sakes, you know. But it's serious. She thought something was going to happen on her birthday. She kept saying it, and I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. You know, you got to trust your gut. You know.
Yep.
And I said, if you're meant to see these things, you know, look at Nostradamus saw all those things.
Yeah. You know? And sometimes you see things that don't make sense. That's the other part, is I just had this conversation with one of my people I was mentoring, and I was like, you have to be willing to believe in yourself, even if it doesn't make sense to the other person, you know, because I've had times where I have told somebody something that they didn't want to hear. And maybe one of the examples is I had a man who I bought a stained glass window at a yard sale, and this older man who was running the yard sale said to me, he's like, I have to tell you, you did a reading for me before. I'm like, oh yeah? And he goes, yeah, I really didn't like you. I was like, oh, thank you. And he was like, no, he goes, I thought you were full of shit, because I had told him that he needed to make sure that he had all of like these insurance policies in place, and that he, you know, basically that something was going to happen and he was going to need all these things. And he was like, you know, he was working, everything was fine. 2 months later, he had a serious accident at work and ended up on disability for the rest of his life.
Wow.
So he said that, you know, he walked out
If he had
thinking,
taken heed, he might have avoided that.
right. But he also just thought that I was just full of shit, instead of being able to conceive that somebody could see something that hadn't even happened yet, that hadn't even had like any clue that it was happening. There wasn't like a telltale sign. And I can do that. I can tell people things that might not happen for 5 years. And, you know,
I want to have a reading with you.
well, you should.
I do.
Yeah, remember, this is my secondary thing. This is like my real job is I see people on Thursdays and Fridays, both online. I have clients in 32 countries.
That's amazing.
That was amazing for me when that started happening. So actually my first episode on Gaia, they called me because I blew through their roof. I had the highest rated episode they have ever had on, you know, like I beat out like the big guys. And so they called me myself. And then I ended up going out and doing my second one because of that. But that same thing blew through the doors on taking me from, yeah, okay, I work locally and I work nationally. And all of a sudden, my assistant and I started creating a map because we're like, holy crap, these are countries like, you know, in my book, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, one of the salespeople or something like that from Inner Traditions sent me a picture because it was in a store window in Croatia. And I was just like, holy crap. Like,
well, you know, you made it big if you're in Croatia.
I guess, you know, but it really was just kind of like, wow. And my mom, she doesn't really know what to do with this. So she keeps saying like, who would have ever thought that little Sally Ann? I'm like, if you would have been paying attention, you would have known it was coming. But, you know, it was...
That's a question though. Does she? You said your sister has her own.
It's not from my mother's side of the family. It's from my father's side of the family. And my dad did have psychic abilities. They were more used. My dad did recon in Vietnam. I knew my dad had psychic abilities because he had some tremendous experiences when he was a kid. He got lost in a bog in New Hampshire because he lived near one, and he was led out of the bog by an Indian chief, but the Indian chief was dead. Like there was no Indian chief living in the bog in New Hampshire. He was led out by a spirit. He was raised by his grandmother, who was my first teacher. I just call her Grammy because she was more like his mother, but she was half Blackfoot and half Irish Traveler, and both of her parents had gifts. So that's my magical line, if you will. And it's my teaching line. It's where I got my education from. It's like the tradition. So like I wasn't raised on a reservation. I would never, ever claim that. The things that I were taught were from teachings that my grandmother had from her mother. And the teachings that I had that were from Irish Traveler traditions were from my great-great-grandfather. You know, like my family was very poor. And because of that, we kept a lot of our traditions to ourselves. You know, they were things that were being done maybe behind closed doors. But my grandmother, everybody in town, everybody around, they
knew who to go to.
Yeah, they came to her house to buy worms for fishing or her food, but they were really coming for her to talk to their dad, for her to look into their life, for her to give them herbal tinctures. You know, it's like she was very much a granny witch, even though she was more Appalachia than Appalachia, but the same kind of Native American and Irish mixing of blood that happens a lot in, you know, when you look at Appalachian granny witches. So when I started looking at Appalachian granny witches, I was like, this is this is what my grandmother did, except for the northern ones had less Bible verses. So Bible verses are often used in granny witchery from the Appalachians. My grandmother's had all of that stuff, but there wasn't any Bible pieces to it. And I'm actually, yeah, it's all that old fashioned like folk magic that came from hill folk, really.
Right.
And that was where my
all the herbs, all the things, right?
Yep, all the herbs, all of the things. And everybody in town called my grandmother Graham. So that was just like the granny witches. Everybody calls them like Granny Smith, whatever their name is, you know. But literally, I thought it was strange when I was a kid, because if I went anywhere in town, my grandmother was never called Florence, which was her name. Everybody called her Graham. Everybody.
Oh.
So yeah, it was an interesting upbringing because of that.
I love that. I love that. I don't know where my things came from. Like when I was little, I saw my grandfather and my grandmother, when they passed away, they both showed up at the foot of my bed.
Yeah.
I could hear my grandfather talking to me, little short Italian stutterer, you know, telling me that they were grabbing his feet. And he kept saying, they're grabbing my feet, they're grabbing my feet, they're grabbing my feet. And then, you know, I told my mother about that in the morning, and she was crying, and I didn't understand why. And my grandfather passed away that night. But we weren't allowed, as the big Italian family, we always went to Graham's every Sunday, but we weren't allowed because he was home hospiced. Right? So we weren't going, but my mom was one of 11, so like they were going. But what they said he was saying is that he said there were gremlins at the foot of his bed trying to grab his feet and trying to grab his blanket.
Interesting.
I know, right? And then after, when my grandmother passed, she showed up too. I could see her mouth moving, couldn't hear anything. And it was only me and my cousin Luann that she showed to. And I have many, many cousins on the Italian side. I'm Finnish Italian. The Finnish side is a very tiny family. The Italians are huge, you know.
Yep.
Huge.
Yes.
So, but, like I think I get a lot of tradition type things though from the Italians,
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of magical traditions from
there's
that.
There's an oil for this and there's an oil for that.
Yep. I think though that like I love the study of human personality. I used to have something slap my feet as a child. Oh,
yeah, that would scare me too. But however, it could be just a spirit trying to get your attention.
Exactly. But you have a right to tell, like, so I used to own a bar and a store when I was in my 20s, and I had to go open the bar one night because my husband was running late, and I was moving a beer order, like moving it, and I got goosed. The bar wasn't even open yet. I thought my husband had snuck into the bar. And I turned around and no one was there except for the freaking spirit that was in and I was like, it is not okay for you to touch me. And after that, I made that one of my rules, was that spirits are not allowed to touch me unless I've 100%. Specifically given them permission. So if you want my attention, you're not allowed to touch me, because and I would tell you, like, if you've had a spirit that is, like, find a different way of getting my attention. You can also tell them, don't startle me. So like my grandmother, when she died, because it was so emotional for me, for her to come through, she's actually the hardest spirit for me to communicate with. She would come 3 days ahead of when she had to talk to me about, usually if somebody was going to die in the family, she'd come and tell me, but she'd come 3 days early and I would smell her. Her favorite song would start popping up in my head, and that would be like a preparation so that I was ready to receive information from her. And so it's okay to tell spirits that you don't want to be startled. Let me smell you first. Let me
smell my dad before he comes. It's sawdust, because we did woodworking together. It's like if I smell sawdust, I know it's my dad.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Our sense of smell is one of our most powerful senses when it comes to spirit communication, because we don't question it. Because you can smell something and be transported back to being, 16 years old and driving around on roads with your friends. And so spirits utilize that a lot. Like my grandmother smells like brick hairspray and cigarettes, so it's like, it's a very distinctive smell. And you're like, oh. And my dad, I didn't speak to my dad for a while because he was an alcoholic and had a lot of damage from being in Vietnam, and he had to straighten himself out. But during that interim, when I first got back together with him, one of the first things he said to me was, he's like, I don't know what it is, but the older I get, the more I smell like Graham. And I'm like, Dad, you don't smell like Graham. You're smelling Graham. But he thought that he'd get in his car and he could smell it. And he'd be like, God, I'm smelling like, why do I smell like this?
Sometimes, because in your own mind, you think this one thing, and then all it takes is that one sentence, like,
you're like, oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, duh. Right. And I'm telling you, the smartest person has those moments, like, oh,
yeah,
right.
That's what it was.
Oh, the skies open up, the trumpets are blowing. Oh.
My dad actually really stepped into his own ability psychically in the last 2 years of his life, because he hid a lot of his gifts from alcoholism, because he had killed a lot of people, and there was a lot of things that he didn't want to have to face. And so, one of the conversations that we had was around that. And I was like, well, if you had been killed, would you haunt the person who shot you when you were at war? And he's like, no, that's stupid. I'm like, so why do you think they're haunting you? It's like, it's
common
different,
sense, right? Yeah.
It's different. And that was that was for him, that was the thing that let him let go of all these barriers that he constantly tried to keep in place. And a lot of them through alcohol, he had already stopped drinking 13 years before that or something, but it was the understanding that, like, that belief that he had in his head that he was going to be haunted, or that he didn't want to see spirits because the ones that they'd be coming for revenge, that was a fictitious thing that he held on to for most of his adult life. And, that's really just not the case.
Yep. Most perception is your reality.
It is.
That's a detriment. You know what I mean? And it's like, you gotta look at it from a different way. You have to, especially if something is irking you like that, you really should.
Yeah.
That is where writing comes in handy.
Mm-hmm.
If you write and you journal, and if you could journal every day, like, you have your different books, have your book of shadows, but have your personal journal as well, of different things that that plague you like that. And if you go back and you read it and you see the same thing over and over again, like, wait a minute, this can't be right. There's got to be something else. I got to look at this some other way. And then if you want to pull cards or something for that, then do that.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Forward moving. How cool is that? That's a new person to the show, but I love your name. I really.
Yeah.
Speaking of, moving forward, because that's exactly what it is. That's taking your whole life, to another level, another step, and looking at yourself. Are we doing reads? No, we're not. We're talking about readings. We're talking about tarot as a storyteller. She does do readings. You could get one from her. We do card pulling here on this show. We're going to be doing that next week, next Thursday, 8 to 10. And they'll get various cards, and we ask people to put questions in the chat or just say a general, and whoever's on with us, we'll all pull a card for you. Maybe, I don't know, do you feel up to pulling a card for, like, the general?
Yeah, I can do a couple, and then I do have to call it a night. I've been working since 10 a.m.
Oh, it's 10. It's 10. So. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, we're going to do one for closing. It's already 10. Oh, my God. Yeah. I said it. Now I'm going to do it.
I know. Look at that. I can talk and keep people going forever. So what I would say, like, I do a lot of, readings. I have a private group called the Wisdom Keepers that I do. You can find that information through my website, but that is a place where I do readings that are more general. So I'm going to do a quick head, heart, and hand reading, like from my book, for you guys. And this is just showing, like, what we need at this moment and this juncture. And so the first card being, what we need for our head. And this is like what we need in our mind. How do we need to focus our mind at this time? And I got the King of Swords, and this is a really cool deck. So the King of Swords is not quite as harsh as he usually is. But what we need to center ourselves, okay? And that means that we need to
I'm trying to get it where you're bigger.
Okay.
I can't do it.
That's okay. So the King of Swords in this deck is really talking about, you can see this. Oops.
Right in front of the camera.
There we go. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to not get my ring lights too. You can see that he's much more composed than the traditional King of Swords. And this is something that's been coming up a lot in readings that I've been doing for people, is that we're in a place where things around us are moving so fast that our mind needs us to be centered. And if that means that if you have a meditation practice and you're not doing it, this is the time to be doing it. It means setting some structure inside that allows you to find your center, because the world is moving really fast and it's hard for us to not be run over by the emotions of the world right now. So the King of Swords is a very armored card to begin with in any kind of deck. He is very protected. He is very much, looking out for that, that need of protection. And this it is too, but he's doing it from a different perspective. He's doing it from that internal protection instead of the armor or the actual sword. And for our heart, what is most important for us to be doing right now? We have the sun. Okay. So in short, I would say literally go solar charge yourself. Don't go get a sunburn, but take time outdoors to play, to remember what is important, to, especially with the 4th of July being this weekend and stuff. It's like, allow yourself to have pleasure in your life, because the world is really heavy. And the sun card reminds us that we really need to also look at what is beautiful in our life, not just what is difficult. Okay. So it's a card of rebirth. It's a card of remembering the positive things that are happening. And then for our hand, we have the Hangman. Okay. The Hangman is one of my favorite cards. Oops, here we go. The Hangman is one of my favorite cards because it's about looking at the world differently. And I'm going to say this, I keep politics out of my work, but one thing that I would tell everybody when I say the Hangman is choose to look at things through multiple sources. Don't just look at it from the one position, because the world right now is so chaotic that if we're only looking at one position, we're probably not getting the whole story. And the Hangman is all about looking at things from another perspective. So, I read news articles from multiple places so that I'm not just getting one influence. I listen to people. My clients are all over the place in their beliefs. And I think that that's the part we have to have, is that we need to look outside the box. We need to look outside of, one view, because it's a really challenging time to be alive. And when I let myself focus on the hardship of life, I'm blinded to all this beauty that's actually here. My hands need me. My doing is seeing the positive that's happening as well, not just the negative that's happening. What are the good things that are happening too?
Yeah, you have to keep your sanity. Oh, thank you for doing that. Thank you so much. There's a person in the chat room. I'm going to delete this after it's saying it's Teresa Caputo. I'm telling you that is not Teresa Caputo, and she would not be putting things in my chat saying for you to give her readings, get readings.
Right.
Don't do it. Okay.
Yeah, that happens, unfortunately. That's the other thing I would say. Really, no psychic is ever going to write to you and ask you to give them information, or because they have some special message for you. It is scamming. It's unfortunate. I've had so many fake accounts made from people pretending to be me. I'm sure you have too. And it's all a scam. So be a critical thinker.
Yep. Also, Save a Fox, if you can make donations to Save a Fox to help that going with Michaela, the suicide and everything. It's just horrific. I'm not going to keep anybody any longer. Salicrow, thank you so much for being here. I absolutely adore you. I cannot wait to get your other books, and I can't wait.
Awesome.
I want to have you back on here again. And good luck with your Gaia show. I know it's going to take you all kinds of new levels. I think you're amazing. All right, so I have to say, buona notte to everybody, and we love you and thank you for being with us. Ciao for now.
Thank you.
And see you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D. We are here every Thursday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you a variety of guests or our own intuitive oracle card reading shows. We are streaming live on Facebook on my personal page and our YouTube channel, The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, on Mama D's YouTube channel, Angel Meadows, as well as our audio-only venues. We hope you enjoyed our show and our guest or your reading, and we would love it if you would go to our YouTube channel, The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, subscribe, share, and definitely hit that notification button to never miss a show. We'll see you all next week, and subscribers, watch for our pop-up shows as well.